Balance is not peace. Sometimes what you call peace is only fear wearing a spiritual mask. You smile when your body wants to say no. You stay silent when your dignity is asking you to speak. You forgive quickly, not because your heart has transcended the wound, but because you are terrified that if you hold someone accountable, they will leave. And then you call this balance. You call it maturity. You call it being spiritual. But deep inside, something knows the truth. You are not calm. You are afraid. You are not peaceful. You are avoiding the cost of your own power. There is a false kind of balance that looks beautiful from the outside. It speaks softly. It avoids conflict. It never raises its voice. It always understands. It always gives another chance. It always says, "It is okay," even when nothing inside is okay. But this is not mastery. This is not peace. This is a broken scale pretending to be still. Real balance is not the absence of force. Real balance is command over force. A mountain is peaceful, but it is not weak. A deep ocean may look calm on the surface, but beneath it lives a power no hand can control. A trained warrior may stand quietly in the room, but his silence is not fear. His silence is readiness. This is what most people misunderstand. They think balance means becoming soft all the time, never reacting, never confronting, never disappointing anyone, never making someone uncomfortable, never letting anger rise, never having a sharp edge. But if your peace has no power behind it, it is not peace, it is permission. Permission for others to cross the line, permission for disrespect to continue, permission for your needs to be ignored, permission for your heart to become a house where everyone else can rest, while you sleep outside in the cold. Peace without power becomes passivity. And passivity slowly teaches the world that you can be handled carelessly. You know this pattern. Someone says something that hurts you, and you feel the heat rise in your chest. You know a boundary is needed. You know a direct sentence would change everything, but instead, you swallow it. You tell yourself, it is not worth it. But sometimes it is worth it. Sometimes your silence is not wisdom. Sometimes your silence is self-abandonment wearing the robe of patience. Someone asks for more than you can give. Your body says no. Your spirit says no. Your energy is already exhausted. But your mouth says yes because you do not want to be seen as selfish. Then later, you feel resentment. Not because they forced you, but because you betrayed yourself and called it kindness. This is how false balance begins. It does not begin with one dramatic collapse. It begins with tiny betrayals. A yes that should have been no. A silence that should have been a sentence. A smile that should have been a boundary. A forgiveness that should have waited for real accountability. A relationship that stayed open long after your soul had already left the room. And each time you choose peace from fear, one side of you grows weaker. The side that protects you. The side that speaks. The side that says, enough. The side that knows your softness was never meant to become a doorway for disrespect. Many people are not afraid of conflict. They're afraid of their own force. They are afraid of what might happen if they finally stop being easy to control. They are afraid that if they speak clearly, they will become cruel. They are afraid that if they set a boundary, they will become selfish. They are afraid that if they stop forgiving instantly, they will become bitter. So they lock away their strength and worship their softness. But softness without strength does not create holiness. It creates exposure. A blade without a sheath wounds everything it touches. But a sheath without a blade protects nothing. You are not born to be only the sheath. You are not born to absorb every impact, cover every sharp truth, and make everyone else feel safe while your own spirit becomes defenseless. There is a sword inside you. Not a sword for revenge. Not a sword for domination. Not a sword to destroy people who disappoint you. A sword of clarity, a sword of no, a sword of clean action, a sword that cuts through manipulation, guilt, disrespect, and the old habit of shrinking to keep peace. But if you never learn to hold that sword, you will keep confusing helplessness with virtue. The old masters understood this. Stillness is only powerful when movement is possible. If you are silent because you cannot speak, that is not discipline. If you are calm because you are afraid of your own anger, that is not mastery. If you forgive because you cannot tolerate the discomfort of confrontation, that is not compassion. It is escape. And spiritual escape is one of the most dangerous forms of weakness because it feels noble while it is quietly destroying your self-respect. You may tell yourself, I am choosing peace. But ask yourself honestly, are you choosing peace, or are you avoiding the moment when you must finally be seen as someone with standards? Are you choosing silence, or are you afraid your voice will cost you someone who only loved you when you were convenient? Are you choosing patience, or are you delaying the truth because the truth will force you to change your life? This is the first gate of mastery. You must stop calling every quiet moment peace. Some quiet moments are sacred. Others are prisons. Some silence protects your soul. Other silence slowly erases it. Some forgiveness frees you. Other forgiveness trains people to wound you again. And the difference is not found in the action itself. It is found in the force behind it. A master can be silent and remain whole. A wounded person stays silent and disappears. A master can forgive and remain sovereign. A wounded person forgives and becomes available for the same harm. A master can be gentle because he has chosen gentleness. A wounded person becomes gentle because he is afraid of what his power might cost. This is why balance is not softness. Balance is command. It is the ability to sit in the center of your own being and know which force is needed. Sometimes the correct force is silence. Sometimes the correct force is speech. Sometimes the correct force is distance. Sometimes the correct force is action. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stop explaining and close the door. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is disappoint someone who benefits from your lack of boundaries. Sometimes the most balanced thing you can do is stop trying to look balanced. Because true balance is not a performance of calm, it is the inner authority to choose without being ruled by fear. But this is only one side of the broken scale. There is another extreme, the person who becomes tired of being silent and mistakes explosion for power. The person who says, I'm just being real, while being controlled by rage. The person who finally finds their voice, but uses it like a weapon because they never learned how to hold force with discipline. And if peace without power makes you weak, power without silence will make you dangerous to yourself. Because when a person finally gets tired of being passive, there is often a second trap waiting. They do not become balanced. They become explosive. They mistake volume for strength. They mistake harshness for honesty. They mistake reaction for self-respect. They say, I'm just being real. But what they really mean is, I've not learned how to hold my fire. This is the other side of false balance. First, you lose yourself by being too soft. Then you try to recover yourself by becoming too sharp. You go from swallowing your truth to throwing it like a weapon. You go from saying nothing to saying everything with poison in your mouth. You go from tolerating too much to cutting too fast. You go from being afraid of conflict to becoming addicted to the rush of finally expressing what you buried for years. And for a moment, it feels powerful. The anger rises. The words come quickly. The body feels alive. You say what you were afraid to say. You push back. You make them feel your pain. You prove that you are not weak anymore. But then the fire settles. The room becomes quiet, and you see what the explosion built. Maybe you won the argument but lost your center. Maybe you made your point but damaged your dignity. Maybe they finally heard your anger, but now your peace is gone. Maybe you called it strength, but your nervous system knows it was chaos. This is the danger of power without silence. It does not protect the soul. It discharges the wound, and a wound that learns to speak loudly is still a wound. Many people never become masters because they keep swinging between two prisons. When they are afraid, they become passive. When they are hurt, they become aggressive. When they want love, they abandon themselves. When they feel disrespected, they burn everything down. One day they are the silent lake with no sword. The next day they are the sword with no sheath. But neither is mastery. The lake without the sword can be invaded. The sword without the lake cannot be trusted. This is why balance is not merely peace, and it is not merely power. Balance is the command of both. In Shaolin-inspired wisdom, the trained person does not worship softness, and he does not worship force. He studies both. He respects both. He understands that the same hand must be able to open gently and close with discipline. A hand that can only open cannot protect. A hand that can only close cannot receive. You need both. You need the silence that listens before reacting, and you need the force that acts when silence becomes betrayal. You need the patience to wait until your mind is clear, and you need the courage to move when waiting becomes cowardice. You need the softness to remain human, and you need the firmness to remain sovereign. This is the meaning of the two forces inside you. Call them yin and yang if you want. But do not make it mystical. Think of yin as the force of pause, listening, stillness, receptivity, patience, silence, softness. Think of yang as the force of movement, boundary, action, decision, clarity, protection, fire. Neither is good alone. Neither is complete alone. Yin without yang becomes submission. Yang without yin becomes destruction. The problem is not that you have both forces inside you. The problem is that you do not govern them. You let fear choose your yin. You let anger choose your yang. So your silence is not always wisdom. Sometimes your silence is fear. Your action is not always strength. Sometimes your action is ego. This is why you must ask a deeper question before every response. Which force is moving me right now? Am I being silent because my soul is centered, or because I'm afraid to be rejected? Am I speaking because truth is required, or because my ego wants to win? Am I walking away because peace is necessary, or because I'm avoiding a hard conversation? Am I confronting because a boundary is needed, or because I want to punish someone for making me feel small? These questions separate the student from the master. The student asks, should I be calm or should I be strong? The master asks, which force serves the truth of this moment? There are moments when silence is the highest power. When someone is provoking you only to harvest your reaction, silence is power. When a manipulator wants to drag you into defending your dignity to someone committed to disrespecting it, silence is power. When your ego wants the last word, but your soul wants peace, silence is power. In those moments, the dragon of silence must rise. Not weak silence, not scared silence, not silence that hides your pain. A deep silence, a silence that stands like a black mountain, a silence that says, I do not need to prove my strength to someone trying to measure it. But there are also moments when silence becomes decay, when someone keeps crossing your boundary and your silence keeps giving them permission. When someone humiliates you and your silence teaches them there is no consequence. When someone depends on your fear of confrontation to keep taking more. When your own body is begging you to speak, but you call your fear peace. In those moments, the dragon of force must rise. Not rage, not cruelty, not revenge. Force. Clean, direct, controlled. The force that says, no. The force that says, this does not work for me. The force that says, I will not continue this conversation. The force that leaves without making a performance. The force that protects the sacred without becoming violent. This is controlled power, not aggression, not chaos. Power with silence behind it. A blade with a sheath, a still lake with a hidden sword. From the outside, people may only see the calm water. They may think nothing is there. They may mistake your gentleness for weakness. They may test the surface because they do not know what sleeps beneath it. But the master does not need to display the sword to know it exists. He does not wave it in every room. He does not threaten with it. He does not build an identity around being dangerous. The sword remains hidden because the master has nothing to prove. But if the moment requires it, the sword is there. This is the balance you are seeking, not the balance of a person who is always soft, not the balance of a person who is always hard, the balance of a person seated on the inner throne. Inside you, there are two dragons. One dragon wants stillness. One dragon wants force. When you are unconscious, they drag you in opposite directions. The dragon of silence makes you disappear when you should stand. The dragon of force makes you explode when you should breathe. And you keep thinking one dragon is the enemy. It is not. The absence of a ruler is the enemy. When there is no king on the inner throne, the dragons fight for control. When fear sits on the throne, silence becomes weakness. When rage sits on the throne, force becomes destruction. When guilt sits on the throne, you surrender your boundaries. When ego sits on the throne, you turn every disagreement into war. But when awareness sits on the throne, the dragons bow. Silence becomes a choice. Force becomes a tool. Emotion becomes information. Discipline becomes command. This is why the master does not kill his darkness or worship his light. A master is not the one who destroys one side of himself. A master is the one who governs both. He does not say, "I must always be peaceful," and he does not say, "I must always be powerful." He says, "I will know which force belongs to this moment." This is where your life begins to change, because the next time someone provokes you, the question will not be, "How do I react?" The question will be, "Which dragon is trying to take the throne?" The next time someone disrespects you, the question will not be, "Should I explode or stay silent?" The question will be, "What response protects my soul without making me a slave to fear or anger?" This is the beginning of mastery. But to live this way, you need more than understanding. You need a ritual of command, a protocol that brings you back to the throne before either dragon takes control. And that is where the true training begins. The true training begins when you return to the throne before either dragon takes control. Because in the moment of pressure, you will not rise to your philosophy. You will fall to your training. When someone disrespects you, the body will move before wisdom speaks. When someone triggers rejection, the old wound will reach for the phone. When someone insults your character, the ego will begin sharpening the blade. When someone makes you feel small, the dragon of force will breathe fire before you even ask whether fire is needed. And when someone you fear losing becomes disappointed in you, the dragon of silence may pull you back into submission. This is why you need a protocol. Not because life can be reduced to steps, but because the soul needs a path back to the center when the storm tries to pull it toward extremes. The two-force protocol begins with the first command. Pause before movement. Do not move at the first impulse. Do not speak at the first heat. Do not decide at the first wound. The first impulse is rarely wisdom. It is usually the loudest part of your conditioning. It is fear trying to protect you. It is anger trying to defend you. It is guilt trying to return you to obedience. It is ego trying to save its image. A master does not obey the first voice simply because it is loud. He pauses. That pause is not emptiness. It is the throne returning. It is the king entering the room before the dragons begin fighting. Even one breath can change the entire direction of your life. One breath before the message. One breath before the accusation. One breath before the apology you do not owe. One breath before the yes that would betray you. One breath before the no that might be too sharp. The second command is this: feel without obeying. You are allowed to feel anger. You are allowed to feel grief. You are allowed to feel fear, jealousy, humiliation, rejection, pressure, heat, disappointment. Mastery does not mean the inner weather disappears. It means the weather does not become the ruler. Feel the fire in your chest, but do not let it choose the words. Feel the sadness in your throat, but do not let it chase someone who is not choosing you. Feel the guilt in your stomach, but do not let it reopen a door that was closed for your protection. Feeling is human. Obedience to every feeling is chaos. This is where many people become confused. They think if they do not act on the emotion, they are suppressing it. But not every emotion is asking for action. Some emotions are asking to be witnessed. Some are asking to pass through the body. Some are old memories wearing the clothing of the present moment. A master listens to emotion, but he does not hand it the crown. The third command is choose the correct force. This is the heart of balance. Not every situation requires softness. Not every situation requires force. Not every insult deserves silence. Not every discomfort deserves confrontation. Not every boundary needs a speech. Not every relationship needs a war. So ask yourself, what force protects my soul right now? Is this a moment for silence because the other person is fishing for reaction? Is this a moment for speech because silence would betray my dignity? Is this a moment for distance because proximity keeps feeding the wound? Is this a moment for action because waiting has become fear? This is how you stop being ruled by habit. You stop asking, what do I normally do? You begin asking, what does this moment require? Sometimes the correct force is a calm sentence. No, I will not continue this. That crossed a line. I need space. Sometimes the correct force is no sentence at all. A closed door, a delayed reply, a step back, a refusal to argue with someone who only respects your pain when it entertains them. Sometimes the correct force is compassion. Sometimes it is distance. Sometimes it is forgiveness. Sometimes it is consequence. The master does not choose one weapon for every battle. He chooses the precise instrument for the precise moment. The fourth command is act without inner noise. This is where your power becomes clean. Many people do the right thing with the wrong energy. They set a boundary, but with poison. They speak truth, but with the desire to wound. They walk away, but secretly hope the other person suffers. They stay silent, but inside they are screaming for revenge. The action may look disciplined, but the inner noise reveals the truth. A master acts from center, not from the wound. He can say no without hatred. He can leave without theatrical punishment. He can confront without becoming cruel. He can remain silent without secretly begging to be chased. This is the still lake with a hidden sword. The lake is calm, the sword is real, but the sword does not shake in the hand. Acting without inner noise does not mean you feel nothing. It means your action is not contaminated by the need to prove, punish, dominate, or be seen as powerful. The cleanest force is often quiet. It does what must be done and returns to stillness. The fifth command is return to center. After you speak, return. After you leave, return. After you set the boundary, return. After you choose silence, return. Do not keep replaying the scene in your mind. Do not keep defending yourself to an imaginary judge. Do not keep feeding the dragon after the moment is over. Many people escape the external conflict but keep the internal war alive for hours, days, even years. They walked away from the person, but they did not return to the throne. The master does not live in the echo of every battle. He learns. He restores. He sits again at the center. This is the full protocol. Pause before movement. Feel without obeying. Choose the correct force. Act without inner noise. Return to center. Simple, difficult, necessary. And then comes the test. The test of balance. It will arrive through a person, a message, a tone, a memory, a rejection, a disrespectful sentence, a familiar guilt. Something will pull on one dragon. The dragon of silence will whisper, "Say nothing. Avoid the conflict. Keep the peace. Let them cross the line one more time. The dragon of force will whisper, "Destroy this. Prove your power." Make them feel what they made you feel. And between them, there will be you. This is the moment where the broken scale either collapses again or becomes whole. Ask yourself, am I choosing silence because I am centered or because I am scared? Am I choosing force because I am clear or because I am wounded? Am I protecting my peace or protecting my fear? Am I speaking truth or feeding my ego? This is the highest test of balance. The moment when you have the power to destroy, the reason to react, the pain to explode, and still, you choose the exact response that protects your soul. Not the response that impresses the world, not the response that makes your ego feel victorious, not the response that keeps everyone comfortable, the response that keeps you whole. That is mastery. Because you were not born to be only gentle, and you were not born to be only hard. You were not born to disappear in the name of peace, and you were not born to burn everything in the name of strength. You were born to become whole, the blade and the sheath, the lake and the sword, the silence and the force, the softness and the boundary, the open hand and the closed gate. Now see the final image, a dark hole inside you. At the center, an ancient throne. On one side, the dragon of silence. On the other, the dragon of force. For years, one dragged you into submission and the other dragged you into chaos. One made you swallow your truth. The other made you speak from fire. One made you vanish. The other made you regret. But now you are seated. You are no longer pulled. You are no longer split. You do not kill the dragon of silence. You do not kill the dragon of force. You look at both. You breathe, and both begin to bow. Because a master is not the one who kills his darkness or worships his light. A master is the one who governs both. Do not become peace without power. Do not become power without silence. Sit on the throne between both forces. Let the dragons bow. This is balance. This is sovereignty. This is mastery.